Welcome to another episode of the North South podcast. And today, Darren and I are very excited to have one of our favorite YouTubers on. We're always sharing videos back and forth of him. Squidge Rugby, I'm sure most of you watch him. Robbie, thanks for coming on today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was expecting anyone from a list of about 800 to come up when you said as one of your favorite YouTubers. Oh, you got another guest on. You got someone else as well. That always throws me. I'm always oh no, it's just me. Right, you're talking about. Thank you for having me. And thank you for saying such lovely things already.
Yeah, no. Before we started recording, I was telling you I think what makes your channel quite nice. Other channels that do rugby analysis seem to be pretty straightforward, like classroom type videos. You put a lot of good, when it comes to humor, it's like some of it's pretty cringy from some of the other YouTubers, but I think you hit the punchlines pretty good there, and I think your subscribers and your views show that. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people share the same sentiment. Obviously, in South Africa, we're rugby crazy. Darren's an expat living in the UK, also quite a rugby crazy place as well. Where exactly are you from? Which region?
So I am from Nottingham, which is very much not a rugby part of the UK. My parents, who are Welsh, moved there just before I was born. So I've grown up as a Welsh person in England, and I think it made me all the more passionate about it for being exiled, for the fact that the only time kids in school cared about rugby was the morning after Wales-England, if England had won, because they could just tease me relentlessly about it. So I think that helped. Yeah, I didn't come from a rugby crazy part, but I grew up in a rugby crazy household.
Yeah, and YouTube's been around for quite a while now. How long have you been obviously watching YouTube regularly, and what got you started? Like, who were some of the people? Perhaps you were inspired by someone you saw on YouTube, or was there a niche you saw that you could fill with the humor slash very good editing and also sport as well, and proper sports analysis at that?
Thank you. Yeah, I think obviously YouTube's been a thing like in all of our sort of periphery for God, over a decade now. It must be like 2006, 7. We first sort of YouTube popped up, and it occurred to me some time ago, why wasn't someone doing this sort of rugby YouTube stuff? I see a lot of right when things like Every Frame a Painting first started, and those sort of like heavily in depth, like YouTube sort of breakdowns of whatever of of film or pop culture, whatever. I saw a couple of football ones. I can't remember the names, but I saw them sort of float. They pop every now and again. And I always wondered, why isn't someone doing a rugby one? And then there was a guy called Henry Stokes, who's a Kiwi guy, made a few videos, made a really good one on it was on how to stop Bowden Barrett. That was amazing, and I sort of came across that went viral a bit. And I sort of went, oh, someone is doing it. Never mind. And I sort of then put it to the back of my head for a few months until eventually I just ended up in a job I hated for a bit, and had it sort of click further to the front of my mind, and I decided to start the channel. It was January last year, so I've been doing it somewhere between 18 months and 2 years, at that weird point in which I've got to think about the number of months I've been doing it now.
And then, yeah, obviously a lot must go into making a little video. So like, how long does it take you to edit it and get all the stock images and get all the videos and all that kind of stuff, put it in?
Say roughly for like a 5-minute video, maybe.
A long time. So if I was doing the first half of it, I do a bit of research. So if it's a reaction to a game, is one of the sort of reports on. That's almost easier because I can just watch the game 2 or 3 times. Whereas if I'm doing one on something else, it might be that I have to watch 4 or 5 games in order to get a background on it and do bits of analysis on all of them. Or I'm doing a lot of reading into whatever it is. So that takes some time. I'll then write a script, which usually takes a few hours to do. And then once I get into the actual editing, once I've recorded the voiceover and I've got the footage roughly loaded up in the edit bay on Final Cut, Final Cut Pro, it'll then take me somewhere between sort of an hour and 2 hours per minute on screen. So if you're saying a 5-minute video, that's probably somewhere between like 8-9 hours. It probably takes me to edit it and put it together. There are far less labor-intensive ways to work, but it's how I'm used to doing it, and I feel like the stuff I'm producing I am proud of. So I don't want to go back to a way that in which I feel like might be less of the case. other than maybe during the World Cup when I'm having to panic and get 800 things out at once. But we'll see.
And obviously, you said that you were in a job that you didn't enjoy, and obviously now, like you say, you're putting a lot of time into these videos. Is this like your job now? Has your hobby become your source of income?
Yeah,
that's
it's
awesome, man.
now what I do full time, which is bizarre and slightly terrifying. But yeah, it's very exciting, and I can't complain really.
And do you also, are there any other things that you contribute to? Do you write columns for anything? Have you thought of doing that?
I have done. I've had a few places approach me, so I wrote a few bits for Rugby Pass. I used to write for Blood and Mud back when I first started, but I haven't done that in a while. There's a few other places, so I'm doing something. I don't know if I'm actually allowed to say. I'm doing something for someone during the World Cup, which is quite exciting. So there's a few bits like that. There's a few bits locally that I help with an arts organisation every now and again, which a friend of mine runs and so on. There's a few bits outside of rugby, which is always nice when I'm able to do things that aren't purely rugby.
Yeah. Darren and I obviously watch a lot of your videos, and the ones we specifically like the most is when you choose the team of the year, because we before we started this podcast, we'd have conversations like that. We'd go through the back row, the front row, and choose it that way to get it. And we've done episodes like that with cricket and things like that on this podcast. And in watching those videos, we saw that you abide by fair use policy pretty systematically. I didn't see you slip up once or anything like that. How's it been on YouTube now that it's your job? Is it scary when people just strike your channel for no reason? And we know YouTube's constantly changing, like the algorithms all weird and whatnot. Like, how do you feel about that?
It was. I think you saw the Six Nations thing that happened last week.
Yes.
That was genuinely kind of terrifying. Like, I'd had an email from them and I'd kind of talked to them a bit. And again, I don't know how much detail I should necessarily go into, but basically I'd said I'd quite like to speak to a lawyer at this point, just to not to take legal action, but just to know what my rights are and know what position I'm in. And a few days later, the videos were down and I'd had those 5 strikes put up to the channel, which was, like, now that it is my job, it was kind of so much more scary, the fact I was losing an income, and if the channel went down, channel was taken down, I didn't have that as a CV, as a calling card I could send to people if I was looking for another job. So it was genuinely really upsetting and scary for, the sort of the whatever it was, about a day in which that was down. And then I put up 2 tweets just about the situation, and the sheer amount and volume and number of, those are just 3 words for the same thing, of people that just said lovely things and were really supportive and wrote to the Six Nations, and some people forwarded me emails they'd sent, and I saw literally hundreds and thousands of tweets, and it genuinely really moved me and made me feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile and good. And I suddenly had this like public opinion that I think forced the Six Nations. I think a lot of them hadn't watched the videos and they didn't quite understand what they're doing. They just seen the footage in there and they'd taken them down. And when they had the chance to assess it, they thought, actually, this is fair. Actually, this does work. And they were entirely reasonable and really generous and fair with me once I spoke to them on the phone and once I had a few more emails back and forth. The situation worked itself out, and I think we came to like a mutually beneficial place. It was scary when it happened, and it's scary that it could happen again at any point. But that's something I've just got to be very aware of, and aware that it can happen to anyone at any point.
Yeah, I guess at least now you've gone through it once. You kind of know what, if it ever happens again, what process to go down.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously you also just mentioned that you are going to be doing something for the Rugby World Cup. It's just under a month away now. So excitement is starting to
So exciting, man.
I know.
So first of all, are you going to see some games?
I am, yeah. I've been saving since the last World Cup, which was in England, so it was far easier for me to save and go to games. I'm very excited. Are you going? Are you?
No, unfortunately not.
No.
I would love to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fever pitch in South Africa at the moment. We think like the team's peaking correctly. That's something I wanted to ask you. Like, how important is it? Do you like if you're weighing up teams peaking versus teams that are just systematically and methodically walking over everyone?
Yeah.
Is it possible for a team to peak at the right time for us to finally get an underdog World Cup winner?
I think so. I think you look at Wales and South Africa, the two teams really that when you look at what they've been doing, certainly since Erasmus came in, they've clearly built towards this World Cup. And you saw moments of what they were doing, South Africa to talk about, last year, and you saw things beginning to click into place right away when he took over. And it's slowly, but it's weird always talking about South Africa as an underdog as well, because there is a point at which they were, despite having been, one of the big three, pretty much always, pretty much the entire time I've been watching rugby. But now they are, which is great in some ways. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, I got off track. Yeah. I think Erasmus has clearly built something aiming to peak, 18 months after he took the job. And you can see that beginning to work. Same as Gatland, it's been a far longer game. But I think I began to, during the Argentina tour last year, get a really good feeling about where this Welsh team was headed towards the World Cup, because suddenly you're in a position in which we were dropping in second string players and it wasn't making a difference. And I think South Africa has started to do that again. This year, it's been he's had far less time to work with it. But I feel like that's going really well, and those two teams are in a really good place.
Yeah, I feel
and
okay.
just quick, Darren, sorry. Just one more question out there while we're on the World Cup. Which player do you think is going to get the most tries? Do you think it's going to be one of the wings, or do you think it's going to be like a center?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or
forward. Yeah. Alan Wynne-Jones, of course. Stick to my guns. Either that or WP Nell. No. I don't know. It's the safe bet is usually whoever's playing on the wing for the All Blacks. So the safest bet is probably Ioane. But it could be anyone. You have every recent George Bridge as well. Equally could do a Milner Scudder from last time. I like Colby a lot. And I can see it being either a Springbok or an All Black, with them being in a pool with Canada and Namibia. And Italy as well, who bit more of a fight, but you probably squeeze a few tries past them. So the combination of probably going quite far and having two, I'd hate to say punching bag teams, but that's basically their role. Especially against two of the maybe 3 or 4 favourites. I'd imagine, I haven't thought about it much, but I'd imagine it'd be one from the All Blacks or the Springboks.
And then as well, like with obviously the groupings and that, are there any key games that you think are gonna be like really big deciders in the group stages of where teams fall in that? Obviously, South Africa and New Zealand are grouped in the same group, so they play each other in the group stages, and with the chance of only meeting each other much later on in the tournament. But yeah, are there any other key games that come to mind for you?
Well, that's the obvious first. That's the obvious big one. Scotland, Japan, I think, is the other standout one. Because I don't know if you saw any of the Pacific Nations Cup, but Japan looked really good this year. And they just shut Fiji down completely, and they put them at 50 points. I think it's like 46 points they scored against them. And they were very good. And this Scotland team is misfiring slightly, so that could be one of the big upsets, and that could decide where that group goes. The team that wins that does then play the All Blacks or the Springboks. So again, I wouldn't fancy either of them against them, but that's perhaps the other game that stands out. And actually, all of the games in that Pool C with Argentina, England, and France, because you can see any of those 3 losing a big game. I think England are nominally the best team in there, but they're still, you saw against Scotland, they're still very capable of just losing their heads and losing a game when it really matters.
And yeah, do you think that, or also speaking of that group, do you think that the USA, obviously that the USA have had quite a good run of form lately in the 7 side of thing, do you think they can carry that over that structure that they're using in their 7 side to their 15-man side? Do you think there's any chance for any surprises, like between the USA and Canada? Like, would you rank higher?
The USA, I think, are the better team at the moment by a reasonable margin for me. I think the USA probably the most improved team since the last World Cup. Russia have improved a lot in terms of they didn't qualify this time and now they're in it. But the USA have improved a lot. They've got a handful of really important players of AJ McGinty, Joe Taufete, Lamasatelli from Saracens as well, who are really big players for them, who are really good. So yeah, I think them playing France could be an upset because anyone playing France could be an upset. Yeah, I think they're really moving forward quite nicely. And there was something else I was going to say, and it's completely dropped out of my head.
That's fine. But yeah, if we can just pick your brain on a bit of a long-term question. If I know you mentioned one of your videos how Georgia's like that's the official sports rugby and things like that. Do you see a country like maybe Georgia, maybe a different country, maybe like Russia, actually perennially becoming one of the top teams maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see any growth curve heading that way in any of those developing rugby countries?
I'd love to see it. I don't know how far Georgia can go. I think part of the problem is the lack of just games against the big teams. Like you see how quickly Argentina and Italy improved when they were suddenly given games against New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, and then the Six Nations teams. And that's the big roadblock. And I don't think Georgia isn't a big enough commercial opportunity for the Six Nations to become 7. If it was Spain or Germany, who are improving quickly as well, outside the World Cup teams, they've almost got a better shot at doing it than Georgia. And a few years ago, it looked like Germany were going to be that. Germany were going to, they were on the edge of qualifying for the World Cup, and they had a big falling out with their sponsors and so on, and it all went bananas up, which I don't think is a phrase. I don't know why I just said it. But yeah, I'd love to see that. I think Japan is probably the best shot at it. And I'd love to see them qualify for the first quarterfinal after how well they did last time. And again, I think the USA is a longer term project, but they're improving quickly enough that I don't know if there's the room in the market for it to be a major sport in the USA, but there's certainly a lot of room for it to grow and to become a sport, to grow from it being not quite where football, soccer, whatever is at the moment, but sort of somewhere just below that as like the optional extras, the optional like fifth sport.
And then, obviously going back probably to the World Cup and looking near the end of it, there's always like the big 4 names that you mentioned are the likes of Wales, Ireland, England, or maybe about 5, South Africa, New Zealand. What kind of final do you want to see? Obviously, I assume Wales will be in it.
Yes. My ideal final is Wales playing Uruguay because I've got no panic on the game. That's ideal. No, there's a part of me though that as a Wales fan, the fact that I'm going to say this out loud, we're currently the number 1 team in the world. I never thought it would happen. I don't quite know how it has happened. If we're to continue that, I would like to see us play the All Blacks and see if we could beat them, because I think this Welsh team is, for the first time in my life, genuinely good enough to actually beat them in a real rugby game, rather than there's been a lot of Welsh teams that if they played New Zealand 99 times, they might win one of them. And that's been the case maybe for the last 10 years under Gatland. And this time, I think actually it'd be reasonably 50-50. And I think, we've got a far better chance than a 1 in 100 chance. And so I'd love to see them play the All Blacks in the final. Whether it will happen, I don't know. I can see, again, I don't mean to suck up, but South Africa,
it's fun. Keep sucking up.
I've sort of had a feeling about them winning the World Cup since that win against the All Blacks last year. I've sort of had it in the back of my head, like I can see them doing this. And with every game they play, it feels more and more realistic.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just one thing that I'm scared of, I think, is like the Islanders getting hold of, I think, Colby and those sort of players. They're fast and quick, but you could hurt them if you.
Yeah.
And South Africa's had bad things happen to them. I mean, I remember like Butch James getting knocked out in 2007 and things like that. Those Islanders really go for it, and that's the last thing we need. So yeah, back to you, Darren.
Then,
Yeah.
say being knocked out in 2007 by Islanders. I remember Wales against Fiji from 2007. There was a different kind of being knocked out. Yeah, let's go on.
Yeah, those Islanders are just a different breed of rugby player. Yeah, they just look like all of them could be front rowers. And yeah, I can just imagine having like 140 kg guy on the wing running at you when you are the likes of like a Cheslin Colby kind of thing, where you weigh like 85 kgs and are like 5'7" or something like that. Yeah, but
they all run the 100 meters in like 12 seconds as well, despite being the size of a house.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the other things I also wanted to ask you was, obviously, like you said, leading up to a big event like the Rugby World Cup, teams are preparing a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in advance. Like all they do is in the long term is focused to this pinnacle point. And like, who do you think nation-wise is the best at preparing for World Cups? Obviously, the one that jumps to my mind first, and probably everyone's, is the All Blacks. They always seem to do it, and they always are prepared. But do you feel the same? Is there another team that you think prepares really well? A coach that maybe prepares the team really well? You mentioned Erasmus and Gatlin. What are your feelings?
I think definitely New Zealand. I think when you look at them coming back from the 2007 World Cup, and then everything basically for 4 years was building towards that World Cup, and they managed to do it again through to 2015 very successfully. And this time, I mean, we'll see how successful they are, but it's been the first time that other teams have sort of cottoned on to what they were doing, and you've got other teams doing the same thing, and you've got New Zealand slipping up slightly more over the last 18 months, which is kind of unlike them. But I think traditionally they're by far the best at it. And I think it's taken a lot of coaches time to really look at how you build for a World Cup cycle. So I think like the first half of this cycle, 2016-17, it looked like Eddie Jones was doing a great job of building towards a World Cup. And then that hasn't quite gone according to plan. And he's now finding himself in a situation whereby, he's got 3 scrum halves in the squad and 2 of which are uncapped, or prior to the warm-ups anyway. And yeah, I've given about 6 different really roundabout answers to the question. But yeah, New Zealand, I think generally, I think Erasmus has done a really good job considering how little time he's actually had to prepare. And I think Gatlin's learned a lot from the previous 2 goes at it. And yeah, and I'd be interested to see as well how Joe Smith's done with Ireland as well, because the Six Nations looked like it didn't go entirely according to plan. But I'd be interested if he was just holding things back, or he was genuinely found out by other teams after how well he did last year.
Yeah. and like in the game of rugby, how much importance? Well, rugby's 15 man aside, it's got the most amount of people per team in any of the major sports that we watch. How big is mentality in that? Like sports psychologists and in South Africa, we have a word called gees. It's like, I think, defined as team spirit and the feeling within the team to win, like drive to win. How important is that in rugby versus obviously the technical side of it, especially when you're entering a tournament that has knockout stages?
I think that's massive. I think that's a very large part of it. And I think that's part of, again, if you look at this New Zealand team, a few years ago, they weren't losing because they just weren't in the habit of losing. And you look at Ireland last year, you look at Wales and the Six Nations, you look at teams that get into that habit of, firstly, as you say, team spirit and building towards that and knowing how, but also just believing in yourself and believing that you'll win and believing the person next to you give what they have. I think that's almost, once you hit a stage like you have at international level where the players are roughly as big as each other, if you exclude the Islanders, who are just freaks in the best possible way. If you, discount that, where everyone's about level, I think it then becomes largely the preparation and the mentality, and so much of it is on that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of examples I can point to wherein people say, oh, if this hadn't happened or that hadn't happened, if there hadn't been a card at this point, or there hadn't been a penalty given here, or the ball bounced a different way, the game would have been different. But I think actually a lot of those cases, one team knew how to win, and that mentality was the difference.
Yeah. A bit of a fun question here. We can just move off rugby for a second before we jump back onto it after that. If just a hypothetical here, if I had to say to you, you can't make rugby videos anymore.
Okay.
You had to make a different kind of video on YouTube. Like, would it be a different sport, or what kind of stuff? It's another way of asking basically, what are your other interests? But you're so interested in it, and it inspires you so much that you do these kind of videos that require editing and research and stuff.
Yes. So I used to do, before the rugby thing took off, sort of political, like UK politics stuff.
Ooh, okay. We love that on the North South.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. So I had a couple of friends, and we did like a few touring shows, different comedy festivals and so on like political comedies type stuff. So I've had a few conversations with them about going back to it, but it's just like logistically difficult to do things. So there's that. I like films. I watch a lot of films, so there's probably something there as well. That'd be the other thing I think I could talk about and not feel like I'm massively out of my depth.
And yeah, you mentioned some of the rugby orientated YouTube channels that you got you inspired in that. But are there any particular channels that you follow now that you get inspiration for some of your content, or some thoughts, ideas on that?
I think part of what I like about the landscape of rugby YouTube at the moment, I mean, there isn't that much of it, but it's all quite different what there is. So there's a few, Raw Rugby and so on, who do quite good compilations. And I've forgotten his name, Andrew something. It'll come to me. You do, compilations and tributes and so on.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Then there's a guy called it's NJG Rugby, who's I think recently been capped by Jamaica, and sort of he covers that as well as doing video essays, sort of more similar to what I'm doing, and I think he's far calmer than I am. I think my stuff moves at more of a tempo, whereas his is in a way that you can actually follow and make sense. And then you've got the Gareth Masons and the 2 Cents Rugbies of the world, who are more reactionary. They're more, you go to them because they'll put it up straight after kick-off, after full-time rather. Yeah. And you can see what someone thinks. I think there's a few times in which the game's ended and I wanted to watch something. I wanted to see something there, and that's been great for that, in the way that my videos take me days to slave over and make. So yeah. Yeah.
And to finish off with, Robbie, probably the toughest question about rugby we're going to ask you now, but I'll give you a bit of leeway in it. I won't straight up ask you who's your favorite player, because if anyone asks Darren or I about that in terms of cricket, rugby, even soccer, we'll give you the best 11 in each decade, maybe even by decade, or something like that. But yeah, if you had to name maybe in the last 20 years or so, your favorite front row, your favorite front and back. So just 2.
Okay,
just 2. I know it's tough, but if you ask like Darren, I will give you weird answers. Like my favorite front guy, for example, is Heinrich Brousseau, and it will always be just for weird reasons. Yeah,
he's a great player, Heinrich Brousseau. I could fall into this for hours. My favorite general player of all time is Shane Williams. I think he was largely the guy that got me into rugby. It was sort of watching him because he was so thrilling and exciting to watch when you knew nothing about rugby. And then even when you did, the way he used to come in and play as like an alternate first receiver, and he sort of changed the wing position in a lot of ways. I think he's amazing. I could talk about Shane for hours, and I won't, so I'll stop there. So Shane Williams as your back. Although, I mean, there's so many contenders, there's so many I could go off on as well. And then forward, I don't feel like I can not say Alan Wynne-Jones. There's a part of me that wants to pick someone that isn't Welsh, for at least one of the two. But Alan Wynne-Jones. David Pocock, I think, is brilliant. I think is
Oh yes, absolutely.
just incredible and a really wonderful man, as well as being, I think, the best player in the world at the moment. I thought Kieran Reid on his form in 2013 was like he's an amazing player regardless either side of that. But he had a patch of form in 2013-14 where I think he was the best player I've ever seen in the time I've been watching rugby. You know, obviously I'm not. I wasn't around when Gareth Edwards or whatever were playing. Dan Carter. Sorry, I'm just going off on one now.
See how I'm gonna have to
fine.
ring you back
That's
in
fine.
now.
That's
It's fine. Just
keep rattling.
what was I gonna say? Yeah, give us a few more.
Dan
Of your
Carter
all-time.
again. I loved. It was like I think it was hard not to have a man crush on Dan Carter because he was basically physically perfect in every regard. I went to see because I just wanted to see him live. I went to see one of the games he played for Racing in the Heineken Cup against Leicester, and I couldn't afford an All Blacks t-shirt or something to show I'd come just for Carter. So I just wrote on a plain white t-shirt, I love you, Dan Carter, but I can't afford an All Blacks shirt. And then ran onto the pitch afterwards with a load of French fans who were doing a pitch invasion and couldn't find him anywhere and noticed that he'd ran off down the tunnel straight away when I watched the game back. Probably just to avoid me. He'd seen me in the crowd in that t-shirt and gone, no, nowhere near that guy. Adam Jones, again, loved. There was something just really easy to catch on to how just furry and lovable and cuddly he was.
Something I wanted to ask you. Where does Bismarck Duplessis fall in your all-time number twos?
Oh, I thought Bismarck was fantastic. I thought for a lot of his career he was the best hooker in the world.
Okay.
And he wasn't considered that for too much of it. But I thought he was fantastic. Of all time, that's a big question because you think
it is a big question. I'd say the last 10 years maybe.
Last 10 years, I think he's up there. I think if you're putting together like a 31-man World Cup squad of the best players of the last 10 years, I think Bismarck Duplessis probably goes in there without having thought about it too much. But he was great.
I'm a huge Bismarck fan.
Yeah.
Durban. I live in Durban, so it's a given that him and his Dr. brother as well.
Oh, of course,
it's perfect. Yeah, you're definitely gonna get invited back on numerous times now. I'm gonna bug you.
His brother's a pediatrician, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of those weird bits of trivia you can't quite.
Yeah, it's surprising that Beast is still going because he's been around since I think 2007. Definitely.
Yeah.
He's definitely got a lot of longevity as a lot of the Sharks have fallen away along the side. He's kept going.
Yeah. How many caps is he on? He's on like 100 and
70,
120 around there for a prop.
Yeah.
Pretty damn amazing.
And he hasn't really aged in the last 10 years.
Doesn't look like it.
I saw him live recently. He's still, I think Durban loves him, man. We absolutely love him. He gets special treatment here. So I think that keeps him going a bit longer than he needs to.
Yeah. I'm going to one of South Africa's games in the World Cup. I'm genuinely quite excited to do the boost thing. I've never got to do it before. I've never seen him live before.
Well, I'm sure that will be entertaining for you.
It's a double. Japan's awesome as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very excited. I've wanted to go for so long. So yeah, I'm very excited to go.
But
Are you gonna perhaps vlog? Is there any slight chance of you doing that?
Sorry?
Vlog? I know it's a long shot.
Yeah. I'm planning on doing something that sort of combines like a vlog and video analysis bits of the kind of video I normally do. I'm hoping to try and combine the two into a new sort of content for the channel that hopefully works. We'll find out when I get there, and it's hopefully easier for me to edit, so I can just put lots of it out rather than needing to pick one game a week that I can focus on.
Yeah. That'll be quite interesting to see. And just in wrapping up, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope everyone will subscribe to your channel.
Thanks so much, Robbie.
It's grown a lot, and over the last 18 months you've been doing this or so.
Yeah.
We will put a link in our description and that for this. But we really appreciate you coming on, and keep up doing your great work.
Thank you. No, I enjoyed that. Thank you. As I could have gone on for hours on the favorite players question. Thank you for having me. And thank you for saying such lovely things.
Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe and follow us on our different social media pages. Catch you next time.